Hi, it's Mike from Apollo, and we've got another very tasty subject for all founders and startups. Here you go. I got my notes. Why customers don't buy, and the simple test that you're missing. Okay, so we often find ourselves very busy. Once a business has been started, a product is launched, we get very busy with like new features, new pricing tables, new marketing efforts, and so forth. And often one of the big challenges is that maybe we don't have enough awareness, people aren't converting in the middle, and not a lot of advocacy. And we do all of these tips and tricks, and we kind of play on the edges here to try and optimize, A/B test our way out of those problems. But what happens after a period of time is I think a lot of founders realize that there must be something else going on because they've been playing with all those variables and still not improving the outcome, more sales, more revenue, more sustainable growth. Well, what I wanted to share with you is something that I think is really critical to understand, that those are all downstream of something more fundamental, which should be the foundation of the product that you're building. So if you're experiencing challenges with conversion and revenue and so forth, what I want you to consider is this question: is the problem we're solving real enough, big enough, and is it viable enough? Now, what you can then do is, as you kind of digest this question, is I want you to look at this through a customer point of view, and that's really how we're going to fix this problem. If you go back to your customer and you think about the problem that you're trying to solve for them, there's a very simple measure here. And this is kind of from a customer point of view. If they are not seeking solutions, and if they're not attempting to solve it now, and you do not have good evidence for that, then the problem is not real enough, not big enough, and not viable enough to build a business around. Okay? So are they actively seeking solutions? You need evidence. Are they attempting to solve this problem? You need evidence for that. And without those things, actually, you shouldn't be building a product. And you see, this is what I'm talking about. We've often built the product without having done that work. But don't worry, there's a solution. Okay, so let's go back to this journey that we're on building a product. And it often starts, and may not be a product, there's probably certainly not a business entity yet. And we often just start building. Never more than any other time in history has building a product or a company been that easy, that quick, so available to so many. So I think we could safely say that the barrier to entry has reduced greatly, even in just the last 5 years. So what happens is we're building something and we show people, and those people all say to us, well, it's cool and that's interesting. But it can be a little bit of an echo chamber. But more importantly, even if they were customers, it's still not urgency. And that's going to be something that I'm actually going to really focus on as a key driver in making sure that you're solving the right problem. So interest is certainly not urgency, and that's going to be a big factor as we go through this. So what we're really talking about is a famous concept that Silicon Valley uses called the product model fit. They talk about problem solution fit. Problem solution fit is very much where we're going to focus, and we're going to use this idea of seeking and solving from the customer point of view. You may also, probably more common, is product market fit. And for those rare unicorns, they get business model fit. They're to the moon and off to the races. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's go back to the early days. Let's go back to problem solution fit and ask ourselves the following question around the problem that you're addressing with your product and your business. And from a customer's point of view, are your customers actively looking to solve this? And are they already attempting some sort of solution? These are the things you need to validate and have evidence for, because they set you on a direction that will be not only because you can build a great product, you can build a great business. Now, if you've been in the use case in the area, it could be that you're overall directionally going in the right direction, but how you've thought about building your product, how you've thought about charging for your product is slightly off because you haven't calibrated with your customer. Okay, so we're really on this mission now. Are they attempting to solve this problem? Now, what you're going to do is start thinking a lot more. I always talk to people about like, this is like being like Sherlock Holmes. You're really looking for clues and evidence. And I think a great example of our customers seeking a solution is have a look at search queries, Google Trends, have a look at what people are sharing on Reddit and LinkedIn. It's the classic post in any sort of community environment. Does anyone have a good recommendation for ... These are all proxies for people seeking solutions. There are plenty of other things we can do for this, and I will get to those, but those immediately just to give you a flavor of them. Now, where you start to see some great urgency is if you see something like regulation. If a new regulation comes in, or a new competitor comes in the market, or a new product comes in the market. A really classic one would be look at the change in weather, or it's that time of the year where everyone's going back to school. These are all triggers for the seeking and the solving. And they are often the real primary cause of the urgency, and that's where you want to play. When we talk about solving, how might we see customers attempting to solve something? Well, I would just think about workarounds and hacks and any attempt to solve some or all of the problem. These are really good examples. So if you're in the software world, I think if people are just keeping these elaborate spreadsheets, those are often a really good proxy. Well, there could be an app for that, or there could be a service for that. So you're looking for people already attempting the solution. Now, where this becomes particularly interesting is when they're seeking, they'll identify the problem. And when you are talking about solving, if they have all the frustrations of the hack that they've put together, when you come along with your product, your offering, you're going to make a whole lot of sense to them. And they're not going to need a lot of arm twisting to get on board, because they've already been attempting the seeking and the solving. And this is one of the big insights that I've had, is it really becomes so much easier to make a value proposition when they are already dabbling in the seeking and the solving of the problem. And what I want to talk about now is if they haven't been seeking and solving for this problem for your product. So if it's Airbnb, if they're not looking for an alternative to hotels, if it's for Uber, they're not seeking an alternative to taxis, then those propositions become a little bit harder. So if you're working on something right now, you're not converting enough customers, you don't have enough revenue, what might be some of the flags that you can come and reveal? And if you haven't seen these and you haven't been working with customers, I'm going to give you all the tools you need to go and work with your customers and identify the real problem to solve. So the red flags you ask. Okay, I think a really big one here is when you struggle or take way too much time to explain the problem. If you find yourself trying 3 or 4 times to say, we're fixing this, and people are like, huh? So it's like that. And you're like, no. All of that gray, foggy, muddy kind of lack of comprehension and understanding, that's a huge signal that this might not be a problem worth solving. We talked about the absence of them attempting any solution. So that's often that, look, it's sort of a pain, but I can live with it, and I can't be bothered attempting any sort of elaborate solution. So that's what you'll see, is they're just not trying to solve it at all. Another one, a good one for B2B startups, is that you see that your time in your deals from start to close is very, very long, slow. You're kind of pushing at every gate to get the customer to transaction. So a lot of products die because they're playing in these fields. Well, what does good look like when you have people seeking, people attempting to solve this problem that could be great for your product? I think it's a hell yeah. When you talk about the problem, they're like, yes, I have that problem. Yes, that keeps me up at night. Yes, it gets me hired. It gets me fired. It gets me my Christmas bonus if I fix that thing. That recognition, that is people seeking a solution. And often they're attempting some elaborate workarounds and hacks to get this done. So, okay, we've talked about the good and the bad and the ugly of seeking and solving, and this broader question of, does the problem and solution have a good fit? Is this a problem worth solving? Okay, so I want to come back to this model that I mentioned. It's a product fit model. We're definitely playing in the problem solution space. And what I say here, the motto here is your customer seeking? Are they attempting to solve? Now, if we go, the next step is, are they paying and are they staying? This is a great product market fit. They pay for the product, they stay for the product. So a good proxy for this one would be that you're not churning like crazy. And another good proxy for this is, and I do see this quite a lot on freemium models, that well and upwards of 90% remain on the free version, and very few, very, very, very low amount actually convert into the paying. That's a big thing there. Okay, and then let's assume they're seeking, they're solving, they're paying, and they're staying. The highest form, the kind of unicorn area, is, are they choosing for you? Are they renewing, upselling, and cross-selling for you? So choose and renew. So it's a nice little framework. Seek and solve, pay and stay, choose and renew. These are the 3 levels. So just be careful that you're not trying to address problems right in the mature stage when you haven't addressed those very early stage fundamental questions. Is this a real big enough problem worth solving? Okay, so we've set the scene now, and you're thinking, hopefully, that maybe there's an area of opportunity for you. Worst case scenario, you're like, holy smoke, we could be in some big trouble. Well, don't worry, because often it's like, those Russian dolls where you're peeling things back and looking for the pattern. And there's always a way to pivot your way through to success. Sometimes those pivots can be radical, or if it's like Instagram, you just took a feature and made it the product, and it's exactly what PayPal did as well. So let me reveal to you some key things that you can do. And this is like great, like design thinking. It starts with reintroducing yourself to your customer, to your prospect, and empathizing for them, understanding them, and being a bit like an anthropologist, really trying to look for the evidence. I would say day one, starting fresh, do 10 interviews minimum with your customers. Look for the patterns on what are they seeking, what are they attempting to solve. And you really want to understand how that is working for them. And your frame of reference is, if you can get to this stage, you might have like what we call a growth thesis or a product thesis or a lean thesis, which is, today, this customer is trying to solve this problem. This is how they go about it today. Here are all the pains and gains they experience with this. It would be 10x better if we provided X, Y, and Z. And you would want to have the evidence for that. I want you to imagine that it's like you're getting audited and you need to show evidence for the customer segment, the problem, the pain, how they're doing it today, and how it would be 10 times better. So you would want to map here, in particular, how what you're doing is distinctly better than the next best option today, what they can do today. If you are closer to 10% better, I would really say time out. That's such a marginal difference, such a marginal little gain. If you're closer to 10 times better, or you discover what that is, sure, it might be a real challenge to figure out how to deliver that, but at least you have a map of where you could be going towards. Okay, so let's talk about some minimum thresholds that you should achieve. So we talked about interview at least 10 customers. I'd love a ton more, but 10's an absolute minimum. I would say if you're going to also complement that, that's sort of, interviews are what we call qualitative. You could use a quantitative method. That's like a survey. So really drill in around pains, gains, how they're solving it today. Are they seeking, are they attempting to solve this problem? And the great news is you can do all of this for free. The great news is you don't need to even write any code to do this. It's just like a Google form. It's like a Google Hangout. It's that easy. Now, some important things that we would like to see across the surveys, across the user interviews. I'd love you to do some task-based testing. I mean, if you really want to get on the tools, get out your favorite Replit, Lovable, show them a few prototypes, a few mock-ups, get some feedback, mock up a little test, a little task to be done. What you want to see is a couple of things. You want to see common language. You want to see common, quick identification of the problem. You want to see, hell yeah, that would be a great solution when you propose it. Whether you are proposing it in a survey, in an interview, or you actually build something in an IDE and you show it to them and they go, wow, if that was real, that would be awesome. You want to be in the middle or above. I mean, you need 50% pattern or above here. If you're telling me that you talked to 100 customers and only 20% identified this as a problem, and then it declined after that on solving and seeking and the task-based, going like really just squishing your market right down. Now, if it was a really, really, really big market, it might still work. But what you would want to be able to do is confidently go to anyone in your target market, in your ideal customer profile persona, and 50% or more instantly recognize the problem. It's such a basic test, but that would give you so much confidence that you're building in the right direction. And how you frame that, that's all in the nuance. It's all in the pattern recognition and learning. One thing I would say there is sometimes you deal more with it needs to be faster, cheaper, and easier. So this is more playing with pains and gains. Or maybe you go up a higher level to the job to be done. That's all in the nuance of how you communicate and relate to them. But the evidence is what you're looking for primarily. Okay, so what you can see now is we've really looked at this world of don't fall in the trap of new pricing, new features, new gadgets, right, on the product. If you don't have conviction around they are truly seeking this, they're truly trying to solve this. If you don't have problem solution fit, don't go boondoggling on your product market fit or pretending that you're like revving up for business model fit, because it's like a house of cards. You cannot have great product market fit. You cannot get them to pay and stay if they're not already seeking and solving in this problem space. It just doesn't happen. And hopefully what I've shown you is you can get back to your roots, go back to your customer, empathize with your customer, understand them, look for the evidence and be objective. Don't find yourself hoping for, wishing for, and sort of pushing forward with the absence of evidence that you're actually building the right thing, because this will catch up with you. So as a rule, no seek. If they're not seeking for it, there's no problem. If they're not solving, there's really no urgency, right? There's no driver, let's get this done. And if you don't have the urgency, you will see a real challenge with sales, B2B or B2C. You will really see a challenge with your sales. So you can see here, you can try different pricing model, but it's not truly addressing the fundamental issue. And that fundamental issue is always going to be, are you solving a real problem, a meaningful problem, a problem that keeps me up at night? Well, hopefully this seeking and solving test with surveys, with user interviews, with task-based testing on a prototype, these will all yield to you the truth around seeking and solving. That'll give you your product market fit and you'll be off to the races. All right. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.